For the first time this season, we're leaving the States. Not because America has run out of darkness, but because some legends are too powerful, too old, and too feared to stay inside the borders. A woman in white near the water, a cry in the night that people swear they never forget. A figure is seen on the roads, riverbanks, bridges, and shorelines. Always just far enough away to make you question what you saw. Until she gets closer. Some say she is a warning. Some say she is punishment. Some say she is what grief becomes when it is denied rest for too long. And if you hear her crying, you may already be where you should not be. Tonight, we step into one of the most haunting legends ever carried through the dark. A story born from sorrow. A story tied to water. A story people still whisper when the night grows too quiet and the river sounds wrong. I'm Quackster, and this is Quack in the Dark, Urban Legends. Let's get into it. This season, we've crossed America through the urban legends that cling to roads, woods, houses, and swamps. Bridges, and the kinds of places that people still avoid after dark. I mean, I still avoid my yard at night. Creepy. But tonight, we do something different. Tonight, for the first time this season, we leave the United States because fear does not stop at borders. Warnings do not stop at borders, and some of the strongest legends in the world were never meant to stay in one place. Tonight's episode is called The Woman in White. The story comes from Mexico, though versions of it have traveled far beyond that. It is one of those legends that survives because it is more than just a scare. It's a warning. It's a sorrow. A cultural wound that people turn into a story so they could carry it, respect it, and survive it. A woman near the water, a cry in the night, a figure in white no one wants to follow, but too many people do. And if tonight proves anything, it's this. Some of the darkest roads ahead of us do not stay in America. So keep away from the shoreline. Don't trust every sound in the dark. And if the crying sounds far away, do not assume you are safe, because you probably aren't. Diego first heard the crying just after the river went still. That was the detail that followed him afterward, not the figure, not the panic, not even the way the mud felt pulling at his shoes as he ran. It was the stillness. 1 minute, the river was alive in the way rivers always are after dark. Water moving over stone, insects buzzing in the reeds, tree branches shifting at the wind moved lazily through them. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then again, and then it all stopped, like the night had paused to listen. Diego stood near the muddy bank with a weak flashlight in his hand and his collar damp from the mist gathering over the water. He had taken the shortcut by the river because he knew the road route would still take longer, and because all the warnings sound exaggerated when you are young and trying to get home quickly. His mother had told him not to walk the river path after dark. His uncle had told him to, and his grandmother had told him. She had simply looked at him in that old, sharp way and said, if you ever hear a woman crying near the water, you keep walking. That had been enough to make him laugh, at least in daylight. Now, standing in the darkness that suddenly felt occupied, he remembered those words differently. Then he heard it. a woman crying. At first, it sounded distant. So distant, he almost told himself it was the wind moving strangely through the trees. But the sound came again, and there was no mistaking it now. It was grief. Not ordinary sadness, not someone sniffling in the dark, not an argument by the road, not some drunk stumbling home. This was grief so open and unguarded it made his skin tighten before his mind could even decide what to do with it. The cry rose over the water in one long arching wail, then broke, then rose again. Diego turned toward the opposite bank and raised the flashlight. The beam barely reached. He caught the reeds, low fog, black water reflecting the moon in broken streaks. And then the suggestion of movement where his light failed more than it helped. Nothing human, nothing clear. But the crying came again, and this time it was closer. Hello? The word left his mouth before he could stop it. A stupid word, a human word, a kind of word that someone says because silence sometimes is worse than danger. The crying stopped immediately. That was the first true moment of fear. Not hearing the voice, hearing it end. That silence, that awful sense that whatever has been making the sound was now listening back. Diego gripped the flashlight tighter and swept the beam across the far bank. For a second, he thought he was looking at cloth caught on a branch. Then the cloth straightened. A woman stood there, tall, thin, and dressed in white. He could not see her face clearly, only the long dark fall of her hair over her shoulders, the pale shape of the dress against the bank, and the stillness of someone who had either been standing there for a very long time or had just only appeared. Then she lowered her head, and the crying began again, behind him. Diego turned so fast his foot slid in the mud. The beam of the flashlight cut wildly through the brush, stone, and river mist. His breath went sharp in his chest. There was no one behind him. No woman in white, no footprints in the wet bank, nothing except the sound. Now closer than it should have been. Close enough to feel like it had entered the air all around him. He backed away from the water, one step, then another, so he could not stop himself from glancing back toward the opposite bank. The woman was gone. No splash, no movement, no white dress crossing the reeds. Only emptiness. Only the crying. Still moving, still searching. And then beneath the weeping, he thought he had heard something else. Not words exactly, not clearly enough to understand, but emotions with edges. Loss, rage, the deep, ruined shape of someone who had been looking for too long. Diego ran. He slipped once over on the incline, caught himself on the root, and lost one shoe in the mud. He never went back for it. By the time he reached the road, he was gasping, shivering, and the slick riverbank dirt was up one side of his clothes. A truck driver coming down the road had found him half crouched by the shoulder. Flashlight gone, eyes fixed on the dark behind him, as if he expected something to emerge from it. He tried to explain. He failed. The old woman in town needed far less detail than he thought. They looked toward the river, crossed themselves, and gave his fear the same name generations before him had used for the same sound. La Llorona, the weeping woman. There are some legends that survive because they entertain people. La Llorona survives because she warns them. That is the important difference. A story that entertains gets repeated when people are in the mood for it, at parties, at sleepovers, over long drives, and around campfires. A warning story is different. A warning story gets passed from parent to child, grandparent to grandchild, neighbor to neighbor. It gets tied to rules, habits, roads, riverbanks, and things that people are not told to do once the sun goes down. And La Llorona is one of the strongest warning stories in the world. It is the most widely known version of the legend. She is the spirit of a woman who drowned her children in the moment of despair, rage, madness, or heartbreak. And then, unable to escape what she had done, was condemned to wander forever searching for them near rivers, canals, lakes, and shorelines. In some versions, she is a soul in torment. In others, she is punishment made visible. In many, she mistakes living children for the ones she lost. And nearly every version, one thing remains the same. You hear her before you fully understand what is happening. The detail matters, because most people do not run the moment they hear a woman crying. They listen first. They feel pity. They feel concern. They feel the ordinary human urge to help. That's what makes the legend so effective. It does not weaponize greed. It does not weaponize curiosity alone. It weaponizes compassion. And once compassion becomes a doorway to danger, the world feels less safe than it did before. A cry may not be a cry for help. A woman in white may not need saving. The woman you think is alone may not be what you think she is at all. That is a masterful folklore. It teaches behavior. It protects children. It explains risk. It gives a face to grief. And it ties all of that to places people are already vulnerable around. Water at night. Because water does not need much help becoming frightening. Rivers are boundaries. They separate places. They carry things away. They look calm while hiding current. They reflect light while concealing depth. At night, they become even stranger. Flat, black mirrors, moving dark, silence with edges. So when a legend like La Llorona attaches itself to water, it fits immediately. The place does half the haunting before the woman ever appears. And then there's the woman herself, a figure in white, long dark hair, a face often hidden, a presence that can be seen on riverbanks, roads, bridges, canals, and shorelines. Always near water, always touched by sorrow, always carrying the feeling that she is not simply there to frighten you. She is looking, searching. And that might be the most unsettling part, because La Llorona is not usually remembered first as a predator. She is remembered as grief, a wound that kept walking. It gives her a different weight than many other creatures we've covered so far this season. She is not a monster in the woods, not something clawing through the swamp reeds, not wings over a field. She is the sound of sorrow moving through the dark until it finds someone near it. Kind of like that movie, Mama. And once you understand that, the legend hits differently. Because sorrow is familiar. Everyone knows grief. Everyone recognizes crying. Everyone has heard pain in a human voice before. So when folklore takes something familiar and makes it dangerous, it gets under the skin in a specific way. Not because it feels impossible, because it feels like one step too possible. The reason La Llorona lasts is not only because of the story itself. It's because she can appear almost everywhere in conditions that are right. A river path after midnight, a bridge over dark water, a roadside ditch after the rain, a canal road, a low shoreline where fog rolls in and the moon catches on the surface just enough to make the distance unreliable. It makes her impossible to pin down. She is not trapped in one haunted house. She does not belong in one swamp, or one bridge, or one ruined church. She moves through cultural imagination wherever the water, darkness, and sorrow meet. And because of that, people can place her near them. That is the one reason she survives. People don't just hear the story and think some far-off place. They think of the river near their own town, the canal road their cousin warned them about, the bridge they crossed late one night, the place where fog gathers low in a way that already feels wrong before anyone adds a story to it. The flexibility makes the legend stronger, not weaker. Because now she is not only a figure from one story, she is a presence that could step into any story. Imagine driving alone late at night. No music, windows up, a road cutting beside dark water, headlights catching bits of the brush, guardrail, and reflective patches where the moon hits the river through the trees. Then for 1 second, you see white. Not a deer, not road trash, not a sign. A woman standing just off the shoulder facing the water. Long hair, white dress, still as stone. Do you keep driving? Most people want to say yes, but legends survive because they know people better than that. You slow down, you look twice, you check the mirror. And in that extra moment, the story has already entered the car with you. Or imagine standing on a bridge with friends. You are young enough to think that the world is a soft edge around you. Someone brings up La Llorona as a joke. Another person laughs too loudly. Someone points over the railing at a black ribbon of the water below. And then from under the bridge, or maybe the bank, comes that faint sound of a woman sobbing. No one laughs that same way ever again after that. Because even if no one sees anything, the place changes. Once fear attaches to a place, it does not leave where the sound ends. It lingers. That is what the best legends do. They do not just scare you in the moment, they permanently alter your emotional shape of ordinary places. A hallway, a road, a tree line, a bridge, a riverbank. After that story, those places are not empty anymore. They are occupied by possibility. If you're enjoying tonight's episode, make sure you are following Quack in the Dark wherever you listen. And if you want to help the show grow, please leave a 5-star review on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. That support helps more people find Quack in the Dark and helps us keep traveling deeper into the dark. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Discord at Quack in the Dark to share your own local legends, haunted places, and stories people still whisper about after midnight. You can also email me at quackinthedark@outlook.com. All of these are in my link tree that is in the description of every show. Now let's head back to the water, because some cries in the dark are not asking for help. There's one detail in La Llorona legend that may be more frightening than anything else. It is not the dress, it is not the hair, it is not the river. It is not even the idea of seeing her. It is the sound. More specifically, what the sound means. People say that if her cries sound far away, she may actually be close. And if they sound close, she may already be gone. The twist is unforgettable because it attacks one of our most basic instincts, our trust in distance. Normally, hearing something far away makes us feel safer. It gives us time, space, options. La Llorona ruins that completely. Now that cry in the dark becomes a trap with no reliable measure built into it. You cannot trust your ears. You cannot trust the river to carry the sound honestly. You cannot trust the night to tell you where the danger really is. That is a different kind of fear, a smarter one. Because once your senses are uncertain, you start making mistakes. You stop walking, you turn around, you answer. You move forward. You move toward the sound instead of away from it. You tell yourself someone needs help. And that may be exactly what the legend wants you to do. That is why this story stays powerful, even when people claim not to believe it. You do not have to fully believe in La Llorona to understand why hearing a woman crying near the water after midnight would shake you. The setting alone does half the work. The darkness does another quarter. Your own instincts do the rest. A legend simply steps into the gap. And once it does, the crying becomes more than a sound. It becomes an invitation. That's the real danger of La Llorona. Not the appearance, not the lore. The lore. She enters through your attention first, then through your sympathy, then through your mistakes. The pattern exists in many powerful legends. But here it is sharpened by tragedy. La Llorona is not random malice. She is sorrow turned predatory. She turned ruinous. Loss that never found a grave deep enough to stay buried. That makes the story feel older than simple fear. It feels moral, emotional, heavy. Which is exactly why parents, grandparents, and communities kept it alive. Because a river is dangerous enough on its own. But a grieving woman calling in the dark? That stays in the mind much longer than don't go near the water. Years ago, Diego's story spread through his town. Another story surfaced from further downriver. A woman driving home late after visiting family, one road, no streetlights, water running alongside the shoulder for long stretches where the guardrail had rusted and sagged with age. She was almost home when she saw someone standing ahead of her. A woman. White dress, hair dark and loose, barefoot at the edge of the road, facing the canal. The driver slowed, not because she wanted to, because that's what people do when something human appears in the wrong place at the wrong hour. She rolled down the window just an inch and called out, asking if the woman needed help. No answer. The woman by the canal did not turn. She only stood there, still as a photograph. Oh. The driver later said that was what unsettled her most. Not the silence, not the white dress, the stillness. Like the woman was not waiting for help. She was just listening for something further down the water. The driver started to pull away, and then in the rearview mirror, she saw the woman standing in the middle of the road behind the car. No footsteps, no running, no transition from one place to the next. Just there. Close enough now for the driver to make out more detail. The dress was old-looking, soaked, or hanging too heavily at the hem. The hair hid most of her face. But what little the mirror caught did not look angry. It looked devastated. The woman opened her mouth. The sound that came through the cracked window was not a scream. It was weeping. So broken and so deep, the driver said it felt like the sound had entered the car and sat in the back seat with her. She drove the rest of her way home, checking that mirror again and again. Whether that happened exactly as told is almost beside the point, because the story works for the same reason all the strongest La Llorona encounters do. A road, water nearby, a woman in white, a human instinct to stop. the immediate regret that follows. That combination is too perfect to disappear. For the first time this season, we left the States, and if there was ever a legend worthy of being our first step, this was the one. Because La Llorona proves something important. The dark does not belong to one country. Fear does not belong to one region. Grief does not belong to one language. Warnings do not belong to one map. Some stories survive because they tap into something universal. And La Llorona does exactly that. Everyone understands sorrow. Everyone understands hearing something in the dark and freezing before they knew why. Everyone understands the wrongness of seeing a lone figure near the water no one should be. That's why the legend travels so well. Not because it loses its roots, because its roots go deep enough into the human feeling that people everywhere recognize the shape of it. She is tragic. She is terrifying. She is intimate. And unlike many legends that rely on the dramatic confrontation, La Llorona survives on atmosphere, implication, and possibility that by the time you identify what you're hearing, you've already made the wrong choice. That's what makes her perfect for a show like this. Because she is not just a story about what is seen. It is a story about what is heard, what is felt, and what is carried. And what people are taught never to follow. La Llorona does not need claws. She does not need to sprint from the shadows. She does not need to stand in full view beneath a streetlight to prove herself to anyone. She only needs water, the night, and your instinct to listen when someone sounds hurt. That is enough. Enough to keep her alive in story after story. Enough to keep her parents warning children. Enough to keep grown adults glancing at riverbanks a second time when she runs the roads too close to the dark water. Maybe every sighting was fog, moonlight, grief, and generations of retelling, shaping one woman of many warnings. Or maybe somewhere near the rivers, canals, and shorelines where the air turns before midnight, there really is a woman in white walking the edge of the water and calling to the children she will never find. Either way, if you hear crying in the dark near the river, do not call back. If tonight's story got under your skin, make sure you are following Quack in the Dark for more legends, hauntings, creatures, and stories whispered after dark. Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or wherever you listen, and share the show with someone who doesn't mind keeping an eye open at night. And if there's a legend from your town, your culture, or your family that the people still whisper about after midnight, send it my way on Facebook, Instagram, or Discord. Because tonight proves something important. There are darker roads ahead, and they don't all stay in America. I'm Quackster, and this has been Quack in the Dark. Stay away from the water. Trust the silence when it turns wrong. And if you hear a woman crying in the dark, keep walking. Next episode, we go back to the States. See you next time.